For review, Nakute Sichas in Chelek Chov Gimel, volume 23. This is the second Sicha for the Parshas Masei. This is a whole interesting Sicha about Hallel, uh, about the way they used to answer in the olden days when one would read the Hallel, and after every sentence, the people would respond and say Hallelujah. It was 123 times that they would respond, and that is corresponds, the Rambam says, to the years of Aaron's life that's recorded in the Parshas Masei, that he was 123 years old. The Rebbe is going to explain the significance of what does it mean responding Hallel, Hallelujah. The Rebbe says that saying Hallelujah is more than just answering like Amen, or when you listen Shemea Kaina. This is part of the Amira that unites all people in saying the Hallel. And that's connected to Aaron because Aaron lived for 123 years. Aaron's idea was that he connected people together. People mourned for Aaron even more than for Moshe at the end of his life after 123 years. The Rebbe is going to connect all these different pieces and explain also that the Rambam's view here is we only say Hallelujah after all pieces, unlike the other Rishonim, which we say, who say that sometimes we say Hallelujah, then you say the Rashi Prokim of the other chapters. And the Rebbe will explain various different things, also explains why the Rambam brings down the halachas of Hallel in the laws of Chanukah. We'll go step by step. Masei Beis, Aleph. B'shaychis mit der Zoll von Shneus Chaye Aaron HaKoyen, in connection to the number of the years of Aaron HaKoyen's life, was wird erzählt in a Posig b'fnei atzme b'parshas Nesenu. It's related, it's dedicated a full Posig in our Parsha, telling us the number, how old, how many years did Aaron HaKoyen live. It says, V'Aaron ben Sholish v'Esrim u'ma'as shana. Aaron was 123 years old b'Masei when he passed away, b'Hoir Hahor, on the top of the mountain on the mountain on the Hoir. State in Yerushalmi. So it is states in the Yerushalmi, Meya ve'esrim v'sholish pa'amim. This 123 years that he lived, because there are 123 times She Yisrael Einim Hallelujah, that the Yidden respond by saying Hallelujah. By Amiras Hallel, when the Shliach Tzibur says Hallel, we respond, the community responds with Hallelujah. That's the way it was done in the olden days. And this is corresponds Keneged Shnoisov Shel Aaron. This corresponds to the Aaron's years. So what's the connection between saying Hallelujah 123 years to Aaron's lifetime? Was is der Kesher von in Nias Hallelujah? What is the connection, the tie from responding Hallelujah mit Shnoisov Shel Aaron, with Aaron's years, his life? Is the Yerushalmi Mevayed. So the Yerushalmi explains, because when the Pasuk says Hallelujah, praise Hashem, Hallelujah, praise God, B'Kodeshoi, in his sanctity, in his holiness. Who is this holiness? Praise Hashem with or in the holiness that is referring to Aaron Kedoshoi, Aaron HaKodesh. With regards to Aaron, there is a posik that says a lashon Kedoshov. Uh, uh, it says Aaron Kedosh Hashem. He is considered to Kedosh Hashem as and because the pasuk says B'Kodshoi, the Aaron Kedoshoi is 123. Das heißt, as der Hilul von dem Ebersten. This means that praising of Hashem is verbunden mit Aren Kedosh Havaya, that this is connected to Aren, who is Kedosh Hashem. So pasuk in Tilim in Kuvov pasuk Tezayin, Aren Kedosh Hashem, and v'yeshteit Hallelu Kael Bekoche. That when we praise Kael is Bekoche is with or connected to Aren Kedosh Hashem. Rebbe will explain all this, what it means, but from them Gufa was the Yerushalmi Farbint. The fact itself that the Yerushalmi connects Amiras Kuf Chov Gimel Pomim Halaluka. This that we say 123 times Halaluka, Keneged Shneisov Shel Aren, which is correspond to Aren's years, Mitten Pasik Halalu Kael Bekoche, with the verse that we should praise Hashem Bekoche. So the Yerushalmi connects the years of Aren with the praising Hashem Bekoche as der Hilul Dar Zayin Bekoche, saying that you praise Hashem should be Bekoche with Aren, with Kedosh Aren Hashem. So is move on as the Shaykhs from Aren Tzamiras Halal. So we understand, because we're not saying 123 times, 123 times, but we're saying Hallelu Kael Bekoche, we're praising Hashem Bekoche. So we understand as the Shaykhs from Aren Tzamiras Halal, that the connection from Aren to saying Hallel is not bloizin an inyan fun mispar. It's not just a matter of numbers. That the connection from Aren, we're saying Halu Kael Bekoche, he lived 123, we say 123 times Hallelujah. Was Beida is misparim kuf chav gimel, the number of his life was 123. And we say 223 times Hallelujah, that's the connection. Was his blazan in chitzoni? That would be just an external matter. The numbers match up. Now, as his faran zwischen zeya shayches in teuchem, there also exists between praising Hashem and the years of Aren, there is some connection in contents. The praising Hashem, which we do 123 times, is associated with the Aren's life of 123. As the Rebbe will bring out, the 123 times saying Hallelujah is a level of union of all Yidden saying the Hallel together is this idea of Aren, which is 123 years. There's also a content connection. Amiras Hallel dar sein verbunden mit Kotsche. The saying of Hallel needs to be tied with Kotsche. With his holy one, with Aren. When we say Hallel, it has to tie it to Aren. Ba'adrabe. Because it's the idea of Aren, the idea of Sholem. So that's why, that's the reason, that's the sibah of them was the gleiche sich ois in Zeir Cheshbon. That's why they have the same number. So there is not because they have a number that makes the connection. Because there is a connection from Hallel with Aren, which is the idea of Sholem, as we'll see. That's why they both come to the number 123. That's the reason for it. So what's the connection that we're trying to find? What's the connection? Darf man verstehen, was ist the Shayches von Anias Hallelujah b'Hallel, responding, saying Hallelujah. When we say Hallel with Aren, what's the connection here? Now the Rebbe is going to bring down the Rambam, which brings down this whole idea of the 123 times Hallelujah, and that it corresponds to the years of Aren. And the Rebbe wonders, why does the Rambam bring down this idea that it corresponds to the years of Aren? Just to remember that it's 123 times that you say it. It's not usually the derech of the Rambam. The Rebbe wants to say that the Rambam also is trying to tell us over here halacha, why a geder of why we say this Hallelujah. It's a geder of unity of saying it all together, that we're not just answering for are listening to what the Hallel one that says, but we're actually participating. Let's look inside. Base. Ot der inyan, this idea is the kuf chav gimel pa'amim haleluka, that there's 123 times we say haleluka zayne keneged shneisov shel Arin, they correspond to the years of Arin that he lived. Werd gebracht in Sefer HaRambam. It's brought in the book of the Rambam, in the halachas for Namiras Halal, in the laws of saying Halal. Was rat reingestalt in Hilchos Chanukah. The laws of Halal, the Rambam put into the laws of Chanukah. B'shas in the minhag von Amiras Halal, when he speaks of the custom, the tradition of saying Halal, so he says b'mei chachomim harishonim, how they did it in the days of the earlier sages. V'zel l'shonim. The Rebbe is quoting now the lashon what the Rambam writes. The Rambam writes as follows: Achar shemevorich hagodol shemakrei es hahalal. After the big the rabbi, the great, the person who is the one who will be reading the Hallel for all the other people, he makes the bracha. So after he makes the bracha, the one who's going to be reading it makes the bracha. Maschil va'omer, so he starts and by saying Hallelujah and B'chol ha'om oinim Hallelujah. So all the people respond to his Hallelujah by saying Hallelujah. V'choizer v'omer Hallelu avdei havaya. He continues and he says, praise the Avdei Hashem. V'chol ha'om oinim Hallelujah. Everybody says Hallelujah. V'choizer v'omer goes to next sentence. Hallelu Hashem. Praise the name of Hashem. V'chol ha'om oinim Hallelujah. They all say Hallelujah. Then he continues and says, Yishem Hashem Eveirach Me'atu Ve'adelam V'chol ha'omaynim Hallelujah. And they all answer Hallelujah. The leader, the Godel, he reads aloud, he announces it aloud, and all the people, they respond by saying Hallelujah. V'chein al kol davar. Same thing on every item as you continue. Ad shenimtzu, till it turns out, Oinim b'chol Hallel, that in the entire, when you include the Hallel, entire Hallel, that they say Hallelujah meya v'sholish v'esrim pa'amim. That 123 times you say the Hallelujah. And the Rambam says, Simon what's a sign to know these 123 times Hallelujah, that this is the amount? That the answer is the Shneis of Shel Aharon, the years of Aaron. Why does the Rambam have to bring a siman of 123? Darf man verstehen, says Yedua, it's known as the Sefer Yad HaChazok Rambam. The Sefer Yad HaChazok to the Rambam is a Sefer von Halachas. It's laws. Das heißt, which means laws, bringt besifrei blois. He only brings in his Sefer in Yoni Halacha, matters of Halacha. Unit in Yoni Derush or der Sipur Dvorim, not expounding matters or that we expound or related stories of matters over here, but just halachas. Ubelshoin hayayvitz, to read to the language in the language of Rabbi Yaakov and Tzvi, the Yavitz. He says as follows: Dvorim she'ein yoytze mehen din mehadinim. Any item that does not result, that there is some law of the laws that are necessary, or loy musar, or not a level of musar, v'hanhoga, or a conduct, v'idiyah hatzricha, and a necessary, something that is necessary to know. Ein midarkei zal litapul b'hem b'chibur zeh. It is not the way of the Rambam to deal with this in this book, in this chibur. He doesn't deal with just stam matters that are not halachically, directly halacha, or a musar and anhoga. He doesn't give us just drash or sipur dvorim. So the question is, l'shema brengt odem siman. So what would be the reason for the Rambam saying the siman, that this corresponds to the years of Aaron, 123? So even though it's just a way to help you to remember, but we don't find in the Rambam even to remembering will bring you a simon. Must be that the 123 with Aaron has a deeper and meaningful connection, which is also halachic related. The pashtus is the tam for us simon. On a simple level, the reason we give a simon if to help in gedenken is to help remember. Ubenidin in our case, gedenken the mispar aniyas halal in order to remember the number of how many times you say halal. You answer halaluka. Yesh loymar shezeu bensiz nit kain mispar rogil. And you can say that when do we need a simon when it's not a number that is usually common? How are we going to remember 123? So we make a sign from the age of how old Aaron lived. Aber sie ist schwer zu sagen, als bloß der Fall bringt es der Rambam. But it's difficult to say that just for that, as a simon, that's why the Rambam brings it. Weil sie ist nicht darke shel Rambam, besifre Yad HaChazaka, because it's not the usual case, the style or the way that the Rambam in his book Yod HaChazaka, the Sefer Yad HaChazaka, to give us simonim, to give us a simon, a sign of gedenken the mispar welche bringt in order to remember the numbers that he brings down. So there has to be something more than just that. And V'yeshloimar is the far mistaber zu sagen. So therefore, it's logical to say, as their siman is oicha halacha, that this sign is also halacha. And the Rebbe explains now that the Rambam is intention over here by saying this number is to give us that we need all of these number, the full number of the 123 times to make sure that we have the entire Hallel said by all of the congregation when they say Hallelujah. And each one of them is important. It's not, you can be Yaitse, you need to say all 123. Mit dem Bringen dem Simen is the Rambam äußern zu andeuten, by bringing the sign. The Rambam is intending here to point out them Geder, the definition for Aniyas Hallelujah. What does this mean when we respond Hallelujah? What is it, this Hallelujah? It's not just Amen, as the Rebbe will say. It's not just listening, but it's Hallelujah. It's saying Hallelujah. As the Allah Kuf Chov Gimel Pa'omim, was men darf oine sein Hallelujah. All of these 123 times that we need to say Hallelujah, stellen zusammen ein Inyan. They combine and put together. This is one Hallel, saying 123 times Hallelujah. And the connection is because that's like a person's, they're all the years of one person's life. So all of these different saying Hallelujahs are one Hallel. Bedugma Shnoisu von ein und demselben Menschen, similar to the years from one and the same person. That is what all these Hallelujahs are. And therefore, since it's all together, as men verfällt Aniyas Hallelujah, if you miss out on one Hallelujah, einmal, even once, felt in their shlemus from their inyan, then you're lacking the wholesomeness, you're missing in the whole wholesomeness of the whole Hallel. Es muss sein der fuller Mispar von Kuf Gimel Aniyas. You must have the full number of all 123 times Hallelujah. That puts together something unique, something special. Saying 123 Hallelujah, Keneged Shneisov Shel Aaron, because this corresponds to the years of Aaron, which makes one specific matter. Was is the hasbara from them? So what is the explanation about this? This is what the Rebbe is going to explain as the Kuf Chav Gimel Pa'omim. Aniyas Hallelujah. That if you say 123 times Hallelujah, sein alle zusammen ening, and they are all together one idea. So let's understand, what does it mean it's all together one Hallelujah? Oich v'bald as der simen is shneisuv shel Aaron, and also in addition, since this sign is Aaron's year, is the full move on. So from this it's understood ados is verbunden mit inyone shel Aaron, that is something associates with Aaron. What is the shaykhis? So what is the connection? The Rebbe argues that the Kufchav Gimel that the Rambam says, at times we say Hallelujah, correspond to the age of Aaron, as the Pasuk says in our Parsha in Masei, that 123 years that he lived, is not just a way to remember the 123, but it's halacha. The Rebbe says the halacha is that you need to say 123 times, because all these 123 times make up one, just like the life of a person. And the fact that this is not just a person, but the years of Aaron tells us that this has a connection with Aaron also. So you need it to be 123 times. As the Rebbe will say, that we want all the congregation to say 123 times, which means shouldn't be just the makri, only one person reading, and everybody else is just is sort of answering amen or agreeing, but there will be a distinction between them. One is a reader, and the other one is a respondent. The Rambam says 123 times. Every time, in other words, we're all reading, we're all united, which is also the idea of unity. Shalom is the idea of Aaron, because Aaron put the Yidden together. When he died, we saw that all of the Yidden mourned his death even more than Moshe, because he stood for the idea of Shalom, the idea of peace, of getting together. So, but now the Rebbe will bring down that the Rambam writes that this is the good minhag to say Hallelujah. We all respond Hallelujah to one reading. But why would the Rambam say that this is the good that this is the good custom? Because originally, why did they institute this whole answering of Hallelujah versus everybody saying it? Was because people didn't know how to daven by themselves. So the Chachamim made it easier. Instead of saying the Hallel yourself, you can say Hallelujah. Why would the Rambam say that this is the proper way to go? People should know how. Wouldn't it be better to do Hallel by itself? But why? So that means, though, that once they instituted for that, this meets the full saying of the Hallel. It's as if you said Hallel together. That's what we can learn from the Rambam saying that we need to go by follow this Gimel. Wenn man das verstehen bei Hagdim Shitas Rambam Beseder Amiras Hallel, we'll understand it by first introducing the Rambam's view in the order of saying Hallel. Was schreibt, he writes the Rambam, Benegeya de Minaga Amur was is given b'mei Chachomim Arishonim. In the relation to the above custom, which was in the earlier time, the earlier sages, Zehu Aminaga Rishon Uboy Royu Leilach. This was the first tradition, and that's proper to follow. Is move on, so it's not understood. Why would that be the proper minhag to follow, just to respond? It says Mavurim Meforsha Hashas. The commentaries on the Gemara explain as der tam from the minhag, the reason for this tradition. Bimei Chacham Rishonim, in the days of the earlier sages, is given mitzad miyut hayidiyah bizmanahu, is because the lack of knowledge which was during that time. As I given asach einam bekim, there were many that didn't know how to daven by themselves. And they needed to fulfill the obligation of saying Hallel durch dem Shliach Tzibur, by the Shliach Tzibur. That was the way they needed to fulfill their saying of Hallel. Heint wie sagt der Rambam, as is royal leilach in the minhag. Why would the Rambam say that this is proper to follow this custom? And not to say as royal as yet there is all allein sagen Hallel. He should say that everybody should say their own Hallel. Because this is only reason that one is saying the Hallel and everybody's answering is because of lack. They don't know how to daven, say the Hallel themselves. Why would the Rambam say that this is royal leilach? In the minhag, unit as roy as jeder allein soll, jeder soll allein sagen Hallel, that everybody should say the Hallel by himself. So this tells us that the way they instituted it is just like you said it by yourself. Einochinami, while the reason was because the people couldn't say, but it was set up in such a way that when they do say it, it's as if they're saying it themselves. Is der fun gufe gedrungen. So from this itself, we derive as ledas Rambam, that in the Rambam's view, is aval pivos the sibes satakone, that even though the cause, the reason for institution for this, in say that Amidas Halal, to say the Halal in a way that people responds with Halaluka, is given to lib the Einom Bekim, that was because of those who don't know how to daven. Aber eingestellt them say the Hamira, but then they set up the order the way it was said in Azah Oifen in such a way as a Zol durch them God mit film. So there should be nothing missing. These take, we set it up because there were people that didn't know how to daven. But after it was set up, we set it up in such a way that they have the full halal by just saying halaluka b'hamira when they say halaluka. Oich from the bekim, that also those who know are still saying it fully by saying just halaluka. It's as if you said whole halal. So the Rambam says you can go all say it. This is leilach, because it's saying the whole halal. V'yesh leimar. So the Rebbe said, "Der tam der roif." That what's the reason for that? That this is like saying the whole halal is to understand how the Rambam looks at this halaluka that they're saying over here. Is moving mit davra Rambam in seinem Sak halachi in Seder Amilas Halal. It's understood from the words of the Rambam when he rules about saying the halal, where zokt, where he says as. So over there, where zokt as aleph, the Rambam said that Niyas Ha'om is halaluka. First of all, the Rambam is of the view that for all the answers is halaluka. Others say that some use answer by the beginning of the perek, but the Rambam says it's always halaluka. Nit vidideya von andere Rishonim, unlike the opinion of other Rishonim. As Aniyas halaluka is given nor beim ersten perek von Halal, that they only said halaluka by the first chapter of Halal, aber by the andere prokim, vielleicht man entfern dem Wort, by the other chapters they would say the word is Rosh Oisa Perik, the beginning of that Perik. So that tells us, number one, that is actually considered halal. The person saying themselves, they're saying halaluka. And number two, the Rambam says it's varan a mispar mesuyam from the aniyus halaluka. That there is we say halaluka and there's an exact number of saying halaluka. Simen lem shneisur shalarim. The sign is the arens here. The says memuz hob nalekuf chav gimel pamim. We need all 123 times in order to fully have the halaluka. Okay. And now the Rebbe is going to explain that this saying of halaluka is more than just saying Omein. The Meiri says, why do we need to say? He says it's just better. According to the Rambam, we have to say halaluka because this is part of you saying halal. Dalet, looks inside. They're biur in them to explain this. Benegeya dem seder von oine zayin b'shas agodel is makri es halal, as it relates to the order that you respond when the greater person reads the halal, and you respond. Frag the Meiri asks the question, so was darf ben haben daniyas von halaluka? Why is it necessary to bechlal respond halaluka? The reason is because they don't know how to daven, they can't say halaluka, but why do they have to say halaluka? Man kann doch jetzt sein halal, you could fulfill halal, durch Herren von Shliach Tzibur, just listening to the agent of the community, the chazan, the shliach tzibur, the shemei hakain. If you hear it, it's like saying it. So we ask the Meiri, so why do you have to say anything? That entfert, and he says, as Hallel is kein tefillah. Hallel is similar to davening. By tefillah is a klal, as ein odom moitzi yedei chaverei bo. That normally you cannot fulfill. Everybody has to daven by themselves. You can't fulfill somebody else's obligation with your davening. Nor vibald as eino tefillah gemura. Since it's still Hallel, it's not a regular davening. Hat man Mekel gewinnt, that's why they were lenient. As medarf nit zogen ganz Hallel wie bei Tefillah. You don't have to say the entire Hallel like by davening, where you have to say the whole thing. Nor is genug, das entern Halleluka kayetze. It is sufficient to either answer Halleluka or similar to Rashi Prakim according to the other days. That's the Meiri's explanation why we need to say Hallelujah. We cannot just listen to the Chazan like the rest of when we're Yoitza with Kaina, because it's davening. Davening, everybody has to do it themselves. Von dem aber was der Rambam sagt wegen dem Minhag, but since the Rambam says about this, know that this is something which people should follow. Is mashma, as the Rebbe said earlier, ados is nit akula. It's not a leniency. We'll let you get away with this. Von demult is move on. So then it's understood. If it was a kula, if it was a leniency, why would he say you should follow it? Then we understand as a smuz mer royun, as is mer roy nitrus nakula. It would be more fitting not to use a leniency if this is a leniency, as the Meiri says, because we're lenient. We should really say entire halal instead of just saying halaluka. So the Rebbe says no. The Rambam's view is different. Not like the Meiri that says in order to be take easy in the people. So we're just doing part. Then the Rambam wouldn't say we should follow it. The Rambam saying we should follow it because the Rambam holds by saying halaluka, that's actually saying the full halal. And the Chachamim want you to say the full halal because it is tefillah. It's a short and full halal, which means you say everything, but you say it by saying halaluka. Therefore, we can say as ledas or Rambam, according to the Rambam's view, two and oiv the ani is halaluka. What does answering halaluka accomplish? As man soll verrechen werden. Punkt, wenn du wollt allein gesagt ganz halal, you should consider this as if you said the entire halal. Weil derech wie mir gefind bei anias omen auf a similar like we find by answering omen on a bracha. As ha'ina omen achar ha-mevorech harezeh ke-mevorech. If you say omen after one who makes a bracha, it's as if you're making the bracha. B'shas mehert, when you hear, umahot kavone, you have in mind to yotze sein, to fulfill your obligation. Aber me antwort nit kein omen, but you don't answer amen, you just listen. You don't say amen, you will also fulfill your obligation. Aber me is nit kimavarech, but you're just an answer, but you're not like making the bracha yourself. Aber when me is oina amen, but when you say amen, is had exactly kimavarech, then you're like making the bracha itself. Amen is saying the bracha, thus haste. So how do we see this difference between the Meiri and the Rambam? Leute Meiri, according to the Meiri, seinen the Aniyas Halolu v'Rashi Prokim, these responses of Aniyas Halaluka, the responses of Halaluka v'Rashi Prokim, or the head of the chapter, according to that day, nit an oiftu in etzem chiv von Amiras Halal. They are not a novelty in the obligation of saying Halal. It's not something, you're not saying Halal them. Nor ze seinen atakonen neisefes. It's an additional takonen, which means you're yotze listening to the chazan. But we want there to be more simcha. We want you to answer and say hallelujah, an additional takonen. as the Miri uses, Kedei lahaflig beha'oras hasimcha, in order to extremely increase the arousal of joy, does haste, which means the chiyuv on amidas halil, the obligation of saying halil kemen yitzizayim b'shmiya. You could fulfill by hearing medin shameya kaina, because listening is like saying, so you're okay. So you fulfilled your obligation in halal. Nor kedei as zayin simcha, in order to be simcha, muzayin ahishtatus b'miri v'poyim. There needs to be a participation by actually saying. Und das ist durch Anis Halleluja, by saying Halleluja, so we have an additional way to bring about the simcha. The Rambam let him talk about. The Rambam, however, he learns as Aniyas Halleluja Chulu is nit as aitikid inyan, b'chiv amiras halal. That's not something, a side matter in the obligation of halal, saying halal and also saying, responding with Halleluja to simcha. Nor atil from chiv amiras halal. That becomes part of the obligation saying halal. There's inyan hasimcha shebachiv the halal, the idea that joy in the saying of the halal, macht achiv as man muss sagen ganz halal. That makes an obligation. We have to say the entire halal for this simcha of halal. Und der Fahr hat der Mesaking when the aniyas chulu. That's why we instituted the aniyas, not an additional part of simcha. Everybody needs to be saying halal. Therefore, everybody, because if you just hear halal on your yaitza halal, you don't have the simcha. But since there is a mitzvah of simcha with the halal, so everybody has to say halal. Yeah, then we're going to halal. My time is a minig was boyrei lelach. That's why it's a minig that it's proper to go, because that's why you're actually saying the whole halal. And now the Rebbe explains. So the Rebbe explains now in Ois Hey why they choose the word Hallelujah, because they wanted that word is like the Amen, just like the Oina Amen is Kimevarech. The Hallelujah is like saying the Hallel. Hey, the bald as the Ani darfun öfton, the answering need to accomplish. As mizol sein kaimer Hallel, if you're saying Hallel, is verstandig, it's understood. As mahot misakin given anusach, they chose such a language. Oisgeklib mavort, they chose a word. Was hot ashayches to ganz und ganzkeit von Hallel, that has a connection to the all and the wholesomeness of Hallel. Al derech v'ani is omen. Just like when you say omen, meloshen emes, omen means that it is true. Was tut oif mezol zayin kimevorech, which accomplishes that should be like you're benching. So same thing here. The word that they choose to say the oine should be like the mahala. You say hallelujah. When the Rebbe held the Rambam, that's why the Rambam's view is as mot oine given hallelujah al kol davar, that the response of hallelujah was for everything. Unit Rosh Aprokim, not using the head of that chapter to repeat that. Warum das drückt euch dem Teuchen kloli wie ikri von Hallel? Because the word Hallelujah expresses the main context and the idea of Hallel. Und hayois as der mekuver von dem Seder is. And since that the intent of the order is kidei as soll sein, v'mezokta ganz Hallel. So we want that this should be saying, responding with Hallelujah is as if you're saying the whole of Hallel, not just saying a small piece, is moving as der zufordern sich alle kufchav gimel pamim. So that's why we need all 123 times and is Hallelujah to say, so it should all be, you're saying all of Hallel, every single Aniyah, that's part of the Hallel. Was the Far bring the Rambam dem Siman, that's why he brings this Kuf Chav Gimel, the sign Kenal Siv base. So what's the connection to Aaron? Like them, the Rebbe says, so the Rebbe explained that the idea of the Rambam is unlike the Meiri, who learns that this is an additional thing to bring simcha. According to the Rambam, the Hallelujah accomplishes like the Omein by the Mevorech. You could be Yotze just with the bracha, but when your own is Mevorech, when we say Hallelujah, is like saying all of Hallel. So now the Rebbe says, but when ich verstehen die Scheiches, von Anias Hallelujah zu Shalom to Aaron, the connection to Aaron. Und euch zu Schneusov Shel Aaron, to Aaron in the years of Aaron. What is Aaron? Aaron wanted peace. Aaron Shel Aaron is Oiv Sholem V'Reidev Sholem. He loved peace and he was running after peace. So he loved the people and he brought them close to Torah, which means the Achdus von alle Yidden. He wanted to unite all Yidden. And that idea of Aaron that we saw, that he wants all Yidden together, was expressed at the time of his passing when everybody mourned for him. When the Inyan Shel Aaron wird ausgedrückt in Torah, and this idea of Aaron is expressed in the Torah Bekesher in Minyan Shneis Chayav, as it connects to the number of the days of his life. B'shas Masei, which is when he died, after his living, when he lived his lifetime, at his time of his passing, was expressed that level of peace because the people honored him even more than Moshe. Then that is given Ben Kufchov Gimel Shona when he turned 123 years. Steht im Pasuk over there, it says Vayivku Goimer Kol Beis Yisrael. The entire house of Israel mourned him. Und Chazal seine Mevayer, and Chazal explain our sages' blessed memory, as in them is Aaron given afilu mervi Moshe. In this case, Aaron was even more than Moshe. Boriminyone is given the Reidev Sholem Chulu, because he was going and chasing after peace, etc. And thus is the Shaykh, and we saw this at his death after 123. And thus is the Shaykhs from the Aniyas Hallelujah to Shnoisov Shel Aaron, and that's the connection of saying Hallelujah to the years of Aaron. Because the fact itself that we are concerned about those who can't daven, loving every Jew, that is Aaron, but especially to have every Yid the opportunity not only to listen and to answer, but being part of saying the Hallel. In addition to this, was this Siba for their takone is given. That's also why was the whole reason? Why did they institute to sue in such a way? Is given to leave the Einom Bekim, that those who were not expert. The Dugmas, Aaron was given Oyeves Abrias. That was Aaron. He loved even the plain created beings. Using the lotion of the Alter Rebbe, those who were distant, far away from Hashem's Torah in the service. He would bring them to Torah. So that in itself is already Aaron, the takone of taking into consideration those who don't know how to daven. Is oich, is also der oiftum der takone is. So what did this accomplish? As anstatt jeder soll sagen Hallel for sich, instead of everybody should say Hallel for themselves, when alle Eden is sached in ein amidas Hallel, then everybody is united, they're saying Hallel together. That's the takone, say it together. Und noch mehr, wie bald as die Anias tu und oif. And since this responses, what they accomplished is Ozanki liyeder rezogt ganz Hallel. It's as if everybody's saying the entire Hallel. Each one is a kumtuis, adosis and achdus amitis. This is a true unity. Everybody's saying all of Hallel. If you fulfill your obligation just because you're listening, is like saying, is das noch nicht kein shleimus achdus. That's not the complete, full, wholesome of unity. Still differences. But afal pi, as alle seine yotze mit der selber amilas Hallel, even though everybody is fulfilling their obligation with the same saying of Hallel, is das aber in an Eifum, was der Kiyum Mitzvahs Hallel is nicht gleich bei allem. that's not this mitzvah of Hallel is not the same fulfilled by each one. It would be einer, there would be the Shliach Tzibur, uh, is in Mekayim Duchamira. He fulfills it by saying it. Unala anderen, everybody else, seine bloß Shemeya, they're only listening, Makabel, they're only the recipients von dem Schatz. Und Yoitze Yidei Vossam, and they fulfill their obligation durch sein Amira, through the Shliach Tzibur saying. They're not saying it. Aber durch die Aniyus von Hallelujah, but through the response of Hallelujah, wird euch getan, what's accomplished. Has alle haben dem Inyan a Hallel of themselves and Eifen. Everybody has Hallel the same way. Amiras Hallel, we're all saying Hallel. Und das Gufis and an Eifen Shalachdus, and that itself is in a way of unity. The Ein Amira Shel Hashatz is the Amira from Kol Ha'om. That same saying of the Shliach Tzibur, which includes everybody, becomes the same saying of everybody, Vos Zainen Oinim, those who respond, they respond to and they're saying together what the Shas is saying for everybody, they're all saying also Amira. And the Rebbe answers now a new issue that why did the Rambam put the halachas in the end of the laws of Chanukah? The Rebbe says because the end has to be with a level of peace. So this is the level of shalom. Based on all the above, we can say this is the explanation. The derech siman veremes in a way of a sign and a hint. In a Shaila Klolis in the Rambam, though, in a general question, we have the Rambam. But also the Rambam areingestellt the halachas from Hallel and Hilchos Chanukah, why he placed the laws of Hallel in the laws of Chanukah. L'chayre is Mekayman in Hilchos Tefillah. L'chayre, the place for the laws of Chanukah would be in the laws of davening. But Vapi Anal Yuma, based on the above, we understand. Leuten biyur ha'amur kuntois, according to the previous explanation, turns out as eine von the Iker de Kinyonim in Amiras Hallel, that one of the main aspects of saying the Hallel, the way it was, like the Minhag Harishon, the way it was in the first custom, but it wasn't just the earlier one, but it was something that is fit, the Rambam said fit to go, is the Achdus von Yidden, that's the unity of Yidden. Those was alle Yidden zusammen, the fact that all Yidden together, staying in a matzah from Sholem betachlis, that they're standing in a way of total Sholem together, and everybody's saying together, bis zu anachdus leim, a complete unity. Und das ist der Siyum v'choisam v'sakoyle l'chacharachitum. This is the end, and everything goes according by the end from Hilchos Chanukah, from the laws of Chanukah. So basically, what the Rambam is concluding the laws of Chanukah as kol ha-Torah nitno lasis sholem ba'olam. All of the Torah was given to make peace in the world, and the Rebbe references further in Likutei Sichos of the explanation of kol ha-Torah sholem l'Chanukah, but that's hinted by bringing out this idea of Hallel, of Hallelujah, that everybody says it together. And it's as if they're saying in the same level. Ches. The Gemara zogt, the Gemara says, Bikish HaKadosh Baruch Hu lasis Cheskia Mashiach. Hashem wanted to make Cheskia as Mashiach. Narbail Osisalei Kol Anisim Halolu. The reason, because you made for him all these miracles. Omar Shira Lufanecha. As the Gemara says, he still did not sing before you, did not say the Shira. The Riber is nicht given there was Hot Goel Van Yidden. That's why he wasn't the one to redeem the Yidden. Because he didn't say Shira, but the Baldas Merube Midateva. The measure of good is greater than the measure of the negative. He's moving us. The Inyan from Amidas Halal B'Shira, If Nisim, it's understood that saying Hashem's praise and song, a miracle is Mekaribu, maybe the Geula, that brings close and brings about the redemption. Maybe the will as durch dem bitter halacha in Hilchos Halal, by figuring out the law and the laws of Halal, the verifying the halacha is unoich durch them Masei hu iker, and also through them the action is the main. Shabeach u'mahalal zayin dem Ebersten, to praise and to say Hallel to Hashem. If alle Nisim was tut mit Yidden, for all the miracles that he does with Yidden, was mizet begoli as yad avaya osus ozois. We see openly that it's Hashem's hand that did all this. Ki Hashem elikechu aneisen l'chol koyach lasis choyel. It's God, your God, who gives you the strength to do this for Zom and Zeichazaim because of Mamish. We should very soon merit so that Amida Shira HaSiris to the 10th, the saying of the 10th song, the Losulava of the future to come. Und noch mehr, Be'oifum von Shir Chodosh, in a way of Shir Chod, new song, not in a Shirohen, but a Shir and also Chodosh, Begeula Hamitis V'Hashlema, in the true and complete redemption of the Mashiach Tzidkenu through the righteous Mashiach. This is Mesichas Shabbos Parshas Matas Masei Tovshin Lamed Zayin, and also Shabbos Parshas Masei Tovshin Mem Aleph.